Welcome to the Emotional Balance Sheet, the go-to podcast for parents with multiple kids, especially those with twins, triplets, or more, who are navigating the maze of modern family life and personal finance. Whether you're overwhelmed by education or retirement planning, parenting dilemmas, career transitions, or trying to define your purpose and plan, we're here to guide you with empathy, encouragement, and expertise. Hosted by Paul Fenner, founder of Tama Capital, a certified financial planner and parent to 4 kids, including a set of triplets. Our podcast is your ally in the quest for financial peace of mind, proving that money matters, but family comes first. Subscribe now and join our community of empowered parents at tamacapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for investment decisions. Clients of Tama may retain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast.
What does comprehensive financial planning even mean? At Tama Capital, it means a family office where lifestyle planning such as retirement, college, portfolio management, and tax prep and planning are all under one umbrella. But it goes beyond numbers. We focus as much on the emotional side of financial planning as we do on the financial side. We get you. We understand your challenges of building a family, business or career, and a healthy life. We are devoted to wealth planning for families like yours because we are you. Learn how our family can help your family by visiting tamacapital.com. As busy parents on the go, it's hard not to opt for the convenience of quick meals, which may not always be the best option for our kids. But as chaotic as our schedules can get, we still want to find the most optimal meal options for our kids. Dr. Teryn Clarke is back with us to break down why proteins, especially for active kids like my daughter Madison, who's a swimmer, are indispensable. Proteins are not just for muscle maintenance and growth, but also support brain health. Dr. Clarke provides some practical advice on choosing healthier fast food options, like a Chipotle, for example, and emphasizes the importance of aiming for quality proteins even when we're on the go. We also tackle some misconceptions about deli meats and intermittent fasting, difficult word to say for me, offering insightful strategies to help make more informed dietary choices without feeling overwhelmed and restricted. Please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Teryn Clarke. So Dr. Teryn, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So today I wanted to focus on a specific chapter in your book, Brain Health Action Plan, and specifically chapter 6. And when I was reading it, I think it resonated with me because, as many listeners know, one of my girl triplet, Madison, is a swimmer. And I'm always concerned about her eating habits. I'm concerned about all of my kids' eating habits because they're really probably not good. And I think every parent probably worries about that.
Right.
And what's interesting is I think my kids were better eaters when they were babies and toddlers because they just ate what we gave them. And we knew that we were giving them the right amounts of fruits and vegetables and all that. And now it's kind of like a free for all. We're lucky if we sit down for a dinner like once or twice a week. And it feels like whatever we cook, especially Teresa, because she's mainly the cook in the family, they don't eat it anyways. So it just got me thinking about, this chapter and how to, nourish your brain. And I know you focus a lot on protein. So I think that's the first place I want to dive in is why are proteins so important or so valuable to specifically brain health? And what do you see or recommend as the best way or best sources for proteins in our diet? And what do they do for us?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, the discussion around protein and fruits and vegetables and nuts, and it comes from the concept that, it's hard to imagine that most of us are underfed because as a country, so the majority of people are obese or overweight to obese. So it's hard to fathom that we need to have a conversation that we're not eating enough, but we're not eating enough of certain things like proteins and fruits and vegetables. And so the proteins are important for so many reasons. And it is so difficult when kids get into sports and after school activities. I'm sure all your listeners can relate to your families just going in 5 different directions. There's no time to sit down together. There's hardly a time where you overlap in the evening, or they're going to work out at 5 a.m. It's just so chaotic. And that leads to kids in America getting the majority of their calories are coming from seed oils, which we've talked about before.
Which we talked about, yes.
And they're non-nutritious, basically. I mean, there's, they're polyunsaturated fatty acids. And so we do need some of them, but we certainly don't need the majority of our calories to be coming from these fatty acids. We do need a lot of protein. The reason we need protein is because our bodies are constantly remodeling. It's not that we build a muscle and then it sits there for our use. I mean, they get damaged, we break them down, we replace them. Our body in its entirety is constantly rebuilding itself. Skin is an obvious one because we see it sloughing off. That's what actually most house dust is, skin, which is so disgusting. But our liver completely remodels, most of our organs completely remodel, and our muscles remodel. So they're constantly breaking down, rebuilding, breaking down, rebuilding. And so some of the protein that's broken down can be recycled, but some of it's damaged. And so it gets excreted. And so we need to give our bodies adequate supply to be rebuilding our muscles. That's the greatest protein need. But the most essential protein need for brain health is that the neurotransmitters that our neurons use to communicate with each other, those are built from proteins. So if our only source of proteins is muscle breakdown because we're not getting adequate protein in our diet, then the problem is when we're breaking down muscles and some of those proteins, the amino acids are damaged and not functional, then we can't use them to make neurotransmitters. And aside from that, we also don't want to break down our muscles for those other essential processes in our body that have to happen. I mean, our body will prioritize making neurotransmitters and it will deprioritize maintaining muscle. And as we age, that leads to something called sarcopenia, which is a lack of enough muscles to do the things we need to do. It's why we get frail and weak. So that's really the most essential reason. The easiest source of proteins are animal proteins because they're complete, meaning that they have all of the amino acids in them. There are some amino acids we can make in our bodies, and there are some that are called essential that we can't make, so we have to ingest those. And they're just harder to get from vegetarian sources of protein. We can do that, but it takes a lot more micromanaging and a lot more thought. So vegetarians and vegans, generally have a plan of like how they're going to get their proteins. There are some complete vegetable proteins, but you have to really be conscientious about that, where if you're having meat, then, chicken, poultry, fish, red meat, you're going to be getting sources of complete proteins. And the other issue, especially for adult listeners who might be dieting or trying to get into a little bit of calorie deficit to lose weight, is if we don't have enough protein when we're at a calorie deficit, then our body will actually use muscles to burn for energy. And so we don't want to do that. We want to keep an adequate supply coming in for those essential neurotransmitters for muscle remodeling and not get into accelerating that sarcopenia where we're breaking down our muscles. We should not be using them for fuel. So those are really the main reasons we want to be sure we have adequate protein.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that question. I think you just answered it. Was if you're not getting enough proteins in your body, like what kind of, is there damage that you're doing to your body? I guess, like you just mentioned, like specifically to your muscles. Because I'm thinking, like you mentioned adults, but then I'm always kind of going back to my kids and other kids that I families I work with that are always so active, and so if they could actually be doing damage to themselves or to their bodies, to their muscles, by not having the right, or by not getting the right amount of proteins. Is that
right?
Is that what you're saying? Is that right?
Needs are high. Yeah. And also, I mean, just for when people are functioning at calorie deficit, Protein actually leads to satiety. So that's if you're in a low protein or low calorie state when people are trying to lose weight. For example, if they're taking Ozempic or any of the GLP-1 agonists, the biggest problem with that medication is it leads to muscle loss because we get to a starvation state and there's not enough protein coming in. And so people really have to build up their muscles before they go on Ozempic, keep exercising, keep taking in protein, really focusing on protein to maintain the muscle, because the muscles are more metabolically active than fat also. So if we go into a calorie restrictive state and we lose muscle, when we come out of that calorie restrictive state, our metabolic rate is going to be lower because our body composition is going to have more fat and less muscle tissue. And so then it kind of leads, that's why a lot of dieting leads to rebound. It's one of the mechanisms, is that when we come out of that, we're not as metabolically active because we've lost muscle tissue. So protein's really important if you're in a low state. It's important if you're in a high calorie state, like a young athlete, like your daughter, because it also helps stabilize sugar levels. So if part of that high calorie state is extra sugar, which if there's processed food, because we're, in survival mode as a family moving around trying to find something to eat and it's processed, it's going to have sugar. And the protein will help stabilize the blood sugar spikes also. So even when we're not in the when you have total control over your kids and have a great, perfect complement of proteins, fats, and fruits and vegetables, even if they're a little out of sync and they've got more sugar, it's going to help ease those sugar spikes. So protein is just important all the time. And many of us are not getting enough of it.
Yeah, I think the one struggle that all of us families face with, active kids, or not even if you don't even have active kids, is how on the go we are and how busy we are. And it's just easier to stop in, a fast food restaurant or even like fast casual, like Panera. Like we seem to eat there like often, or Chipotle or Jimmy John's or whomever. And it's just, it's easier to pick something up on the go like that. And so I'm wondering if even those kinds of proteins do they have good and bad with them? Is there something there because it's, I don't know if the right word is processed food or not, but is there something there that we should be aware of when we're having to grab something quickly on the go because we just don't have a choice?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that's always a way to make healthier choices when you have to grab and go. In terms of, having access to having kids have calories in their backpack, there's great choices for protein bars. If you are reading the labels ahead of time, you can find some great options, and having those always as a backup. So they're not ending up at the vending machine buying candy just because they need calories. I mean, kids are so active and they do need energy. So having those on hand, I think is great. It's like, I never travel without like 4 or 5 protein bars in my backpack because I just don't want to get stuck in an airport that has junky food and no good options. I really, for morning sources when you're grabbing and going, the Starbucks sous vide egg bites are a pretty good option. That's a great source of eggs are a great source of protein. And you mentioned Chipotle, which is, I think, one of my more preferred fast food.
Oh, thank God you said that, because you're going to make me nervous if you said it wasn't, because I eat there multiple times a week.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can really make good choices. You can get a lot of protein. There's an offering of a lot of vegetables. They're fresh. I think that's a great option. And then even for your vegetarian listeners, combining a lot of the foods they have, beans, rice, corn, you can really start to build some complete proteins with their offerings. So I think that's actually a good option. And then for athletes, if they really have high demand, you can double up the proteins. I feel like it's quite a flexible option. So, we've got to do what we've got to do. If we can find choices, they do need calories, so carbs are good for them, but it's hard to get enough protein when you're at the sandwich shop. You can get double meat, but you still may not be getting the protein needs that are matching their output and their remodeling, and they're actually in a building mode. So they don't just need the maintenance, they need the remodeling plus the build. So they really do have high protein demands. But, if we can avoid fried food in our running about, that's also a great way to avoid the seed oils. and minimize that as a calorie source for them. It's just not a healthy calorie source.
On a really personal question, one of the things I'm interested to get your feedback on is when you go back to the deli meats for a second, is are deli meats, it's a loaded question to put you on the spot like this, but I'm just going to do it anyways because that's our relationship now. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Because I made a significant change in my diet about a year and a half ago where I would basically make a deli sandwich every day for lunch, and I wouldn't put like mayo or anything else on it. It would be like, just the meat and the bread, and that was about it. Mm-hmm. And I started reading about how deli meats can be very processed. Is that the right word? And so it got me thinking, I'm like, well, here I am thinking I'm doing something healthy. I'm eating something healthy, and it wasn't making me feel great. And so I'm like, well, wait a minute, is this really that healthy? And I stopped.
Yeah. I think with deli meats, unfortunately, it's an item. If you're going to eat a lot of deli meats, you have to go for the higher expense ones, which is unfortunate. But, actually going to the deli and getting the sliced meat is a good option. And then I have migraineurs in my family, so we avoid the nitrates because they can really trigger migraines, but they're also not great for our health. So if you can find the nitrate-free deli meats, that would be best. Another option, which is like, oh my gosh, that's adding so much time to your day. But you can just get the turkey breasts and cook them and slice them up. They're a lot thicker. That's a good way to avoid some of the chemicals that could be processed, depending how much effort you're going to make. With our kids, we used to do a lot of lunches with just like turkey and cheese roll-ups or ham and cheese roll-ups and no bread at all, to just try to get enough protein and healthy fats in them. And they really loved those. That was probably the major mid-source source of protein for my kids for like 4 or 5 years. So,
yeah, I remember making those. Like I would make turkey or ham roll-ups for an entire week, and then they would just pick them out for their lunch every day. And then I think we did that for like at least a year or two, and then they got burned out, and they're like, they never eat those. I've never seen them eat it again.
Yeah. And then we switched to salami with like cream cheese on it, folded up like a little taco, and that lasted a while. So yeah, we had to keep switching them up too, because they get bored faster than I get bored making them, right? So, but yes, you could go crazy. And I think that you can, if you get super on the elite wellness side of things, it's like you have to basically raise your own chickens. I mean, somewhere between there and where we are today is a healthy spot that's manageable, and we have to be able to accomplish it. So, it's about minimizing our exposure to toxins. Are we going to totally remove toxins from our lives? We are not, because we live in this modern world. So, where we can make healthier choices, where you can pick a Chipotle over perhaps McDonald's or, a Jack in the Box. I feel like, the more gluttonous I see the ads are, I think it's probably less healthy. And you don't really see that from Chipotle, right? You don't see like this overstuffed bowl of, it's relatively, you can really make healthy choices there. So just thinking about that and making conscientious decisions to be a little bit healthier.
So I'm curious to know, I guess this is kind of like a why question, was why did you include this topic within the book? And like what would be like the main point or main couple points that you wanted to stress to people, with this, chapter 6 on nourishing your brain as part of the book?
Well, when I, talk about intermittent fasting, so we're restricting the time we're eating, and I talk about cutting down sugar, and I talk about cutting down seed oils. And so I don't want people to so much focus on the things they can't have. I wanted to be sure they knew, like, there's so many things we do need, and we're not getting enough of those, surprisingly. So when you focus on trying to get the protein you should be taking in and the fruits and vegetables, which include fiber, that we should be taking in, you realize that you actually don't have that much hunger left for the other things that aren't as unhealthy, because you're pretty full when you're eating the protein you should eat, when you're eating all those fruits and vegetables. Like, that's actually, you're eating quite a lot. And so I feel like focusing on really what your body needs makes it kind of natural for the things that you don't need to fall by the wayside. And I didn't want people to read, don't have this, don't have that, don't have that, and feel like they're going to starve. It's like, no,
Right.
you need to like eat all this stuff and then see if you even have room for that stuff. You won't have as much room for it. So just prioritizing the things that our bodies really need and the things we're not getting enough of.
It's interesting because when I was listening to you say that, in my world of financial planning, when people first meet me and they're trying to figure out, the word budget often comes up, and I kind of squashed that right away. I'm like, I don't believe in budgeting, and people like step back. I'm like, what did you just say? Like, aren't you a financial advisor? Like, this is your bread and butter. You're supposed to tell me like, here's my budget. And just like you mentioned, like I find that budgets are restrictive. They say what you can't spend on or what you can spend on. And rather than getting so restrictive and focused on, okay, well, I'm only planning to spend, I don't know, $100 a month, like eating out, or, $500 for this or $200 for that. What I try to do is look at the holistic picture, kind of like what you do with this brain health action plan is, some months you're going to spend more than others, just like some months you're going to eat better than others. But I think of knowing like what that like total is or what that ultimate goal is, people have a much better chance at having success than they do if I tell them, no, you can't, spend that $5 at Starbucks every morning for your latte, because that's just part of their natural morning routine and getting them going. And you take that away, you kind of blow up their world. And I often tell people, focus on the bigger decisions in your life, like how much you're paying for your car or your house or a vacation or things like that. Like that $5 latte. And there's been lots of books or papers written on this. Like, it's not going to make you a millionaire taking that $5 out every day. It's just not. There's not enough compounding of numbers to make that happen. And so I think that was one of the things I really related to, like what you were saying or at least from my part on the financial planning side.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like if we're talking about fruits and vegetables and we're trying to get 5 servings, when you lay that out, you're like, okay, well, I need to have a serving with each meal. And I probably need to have a snack in the morning and a snack in the afternoon. And if you're planning ahead and taking snacks with you to work or something, you kind of realize like, well, I only have so many times I'm going to eat today and these 5 things to get in there. So I'm probably at my mid-morning break not going to go eat cookies because I'm eating my blueberries that I brought, or, blueberries and nuts or whatever it is. You kind of don't have room in your day to eat as much of the, the garbagey stuff or the seed oil packed processed food. So focusing on the positive is always my goal anyway. So that's where it came from.
Well, I think that's a really good point to wrap up this conversation on getting the right nourishment for your brain. And I think that's a really key point, is trying to keep it positive. So, well, Dr. Teryn, thank you very much for another great conversation, and we'll look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, we'll see you next month. Thanks.
As a parent who's always on the go with my kids, this episode was really important to share, I believe, because we always want to be doing what's best for our kids, especially when it comes to nutrition. I see firsthand my daughter Madison, when she's eating well, she's usually a much calmer, happier kid, and is competing much better, along with my other kids that are active as well in basketball and other different sports. So I think this conversation really hit home for me, and Dr. Clarke emphasizing that there are options out there on the go. And she named a few, like egg bites at Starbucks, Chipotle. There are good proteins out there for not only our kids, but for us as well, because as parents, we're trying to grab something quick between meets and practice and games. It's never ending. But I think the other point I want to emphasize is that it's not an all or nothing. It's just because you have one bad decision meal, if you will, doesn't mean you need to fall off the wagon. So I think this conversation, like many of the other ones I've had with Dr. Clarke over the past 6 to 8 months, really emphasizes making smarter decisions, trying to pre-plan ahead of time, and knowing what you're getting yourself into. Now that you've made it to the end of another great conversation, are you looking for more? If so, head over to tamacapital.com, where you will find all of our conversations. Use the search feature to find the topic or guest you would love to learn more about. Also, don't forget to make someone else's day by sharing our show. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.